Welcome to the Effortless Swimming Podcast. My guest today is Dave Halantas. He's based in Melbourne here. And Dave, you came to a clinic in 2019 and have gone through the Cats Challenge. And you emailed me the other day saying you had a pretty good Ironman swim time, taking 7.5 minutes off your previous PB. So from a 114 high to down to a 107. So I wanted to get you on the podcast to talk about what you've changed over the last 12 months to see such a big improvement in your swim times in that Ironman swim distance. So welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Thanks, Brenton. Thanks for having me. I wouldn't say pretty good, but I think there's a lot to work on there, but it's getting there.
Yeah, well, look, there's so many people at a similar speed. I think, especially when you first started 114, so many people typically start off around that pace, and many of them would be pretty stoked to get down to that 107. So no matter where you're at, I think you can, people can relate. So let's just jump straight into that. So how long had you been swimming when you first came to our clinic in 2019?
Yeah, look, I'd probably been swimming. I joined a tri squad towards the kind of middle or tail end of 2018 with not much of a swimming background. I had the basic swimming background as any, growing up in Australia, and your parents send you to the basic kind of swimming lessons and things like that. But by no means I'm not a swimmer. And so I kind of joined the tri squad, and I was in the development squad, and was swimming twice a week. And yeah, and that was it was just swimming twice a week, and I felt like I had a lot to work on. It was someone actually within the squad had mentioned the freestyle correction clinic, and I thought, I've got to try anything here, and I'll give that a go. So that was my first experience with that. And the video that was taken during that time has been a staple for me in terms of something I've gone back to. And I know that was 2019, but still, I think I last watched it again only a few weeks ago. There's still things that I look at then that I go, just to go back to my mind and just to keep working on it. Yeah, but that was my swimming background leading into that.
It sounded like you were able to sort of pick up quite a few things from that clinic, because I was just looking back through my emails and I saw one that you wrote maybe a few weeks after the clinic, and you said, I think my swim coach my swim coach said, "Where have you been learning to swim?" or something like that. Like what were some of those things that you'd done that you changed afterwards?
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the big takeaways that you got me to work on was kind of my shoulder rotation. I was clearly over rotating, and as a result, my breath was, I was kind of turning right around with that. It felt really funny at first because you said, I think you told me, you said it was going to feel like you were swimming really flat, and I did for a long time, felt like I was swimming really flat. So that was something that was picked up by my coach in the pool. And that's why that question was asked. And that was something that I really tried to work on until it felt normal. So yeah, that was the key thing that I took away really from that clinic, was around my shoulder rotation, and something, that I worked on. So yeah, it's funny. I remember now you said that comment was made. But yeah.
That's funny. Did that come from the over rotation of the shoulders? Did that come from something that you had been told previously, or you had maybe seen a video or something where it's you've got to rotate from side to side, or was it just what was naturally happening on what you thought you should do?
Yeah, it was what I'd heard, the importance of rotation and, trying to rotate through the water. So it was something I was thinking about doing. And look, the reality was I was getting so much information from so many different sources leading into this clinic I did. And, I'd always given swimming a go, mates from school, and I'd often get advice from people that were better swimmers than I was, with not much of a swimming background that they had, or a coaching background by any means. And so I was always getting fed different pieces of stimulus, and one of them was definitely around, the need to rotate. So yeah, it's something that I was doing, but clearly doing too much and overdoing. So yeah, so I think the video to look at and some clear and concise kind of basic things just to really focus on just gave me one piece of stimulus to work on, as opposed to all these different messages. And that was part of me coming to see you, Brent. It was frustrating me, the fact that people were telling me all these different things. I remember one of the things I was getting told before coming to the clinic was I need to keep my head still. I need to keep my head still. I need to keep my head still, because it was kind of bouncing around everywhere. But I never knew how. I'd often get told, I need to do this, but I never knew how as well. And through, some of the drills and stuff that you spoke about and you gave, I was able to make that connection with the drills, and that's how I actually change my motor patterns or, my behaviors.
Yeah, it's interesting that because you could get the same piece of advice. Like someone could say to you, like, don't rotate so much. And, without maybe explaining why and without the visuals, I feel like some people won't buy into it as much because they can't see it for themselves necessarily. And then they don't know, well, they haven't had to explain to them that, okay, if you rotate less, well, then you'll be able to get a better catch and you'll be able to do this and it will have these flow on effects. So I think that's why it's good just to be able to sit down for a period of time and go through it and then take the time to work on those corrections and actually know what it's going to require for you to make that change and how it's going to feel. So that's why I think the benefit of the clinics or just having some personal coaching where you can actually get the full story, I think, because like for me, if I'm out at the surf and I'm an okay surfer, I'm not great, but like I sort of pick up some tips from, again, watching YouTube videos and that sort of thing. And I feel like I'd be qualified to give some advice out there to some people who are not as good as me. But like I might be able to copy something that I've said before, that I've heard before, and tell them that. But I've realized that it's not going to make a difference to them because they don't have the full story on why or how to do it properly. So I think that's why you're better when you get to take some time to actually sort of sit down and go through it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think look, the advice I was getting wasn't wrong. It was all relevant and it was all things that I was doing. And it's something like, my left arm was dropping, and I need to try to keep that higher. There's all these things that I was doing, but you were able to identify one core thing that I can work on, and it helped fix all those other things, like my arm dropping. If I stopped, over rotating my arm, the arm out in front would stay out for a bit longer, things like that. So I was able to address all these other things that people had told me through that one area that you told me to work on. So I think your ability to identify that one thing was really helpful.
That's really cool. And I mean, it's hard to kind of give that advice in a squad setting too, because there's a lot of swimmers in there and you've only got so much time. So I think that's when you can get that full story by having the time to do it makes a big difference. And I want to jump ahead to last year's Cairns Ironman swim and this year's Cairns Ironman swim. So to take that almost 8 minutes off your time, what were some lessons that you learned in the first one? And then what was it that you changed over the 12 months to have such a better result?
Yeah, I think there's probably a fair few factors to this result that goes into it. And I love to say it was all just from doing all these drills and things like that. And I think that's all part of it. But there was a confidence factor as well within myself. And I developed a bit of, anxiety with open water swimming. And that kind of developed about, 2 months prior to doing my first Ironman, which wasn't ideal timing because up until that point I was feeling okay in the open water. And it led into, some panic attacks and things like that. So that was something I was working on leading into last year's Ironman and something that I've continued to work on and I feel like I'm able to manage that quite well now. And I think there's a confidence factor where my position in terms of where I seated myself with the Ironman seating in different zones and where you can put yourself. My coach gave me some really good advice in terms of this one as opposed to the last one, and that was put myself in zone 1. Last time I put myself in zone 4, and that I felt was great advice because I was able to swim with faster swimmers than me, and that also helped me with my sighting and things like that. Generally, because they're a lot better swimmers than I am, they can swim in a straight line a lot clearer. So things like that were all part of this. Don't get me wrong, I'm swimming a lot better than I was last year, but I think that's also part of it as well. So I was a lot more relaxed and confident with my swimming. And
was that because you'd done the race before and you kind of knew what to expect? Was that part of that confidence as well?
Yeah, there was that. The fact, I had done it before. I'd worked through some of that panic attack kind of stuff, and that's something that hasn't happened for probably since before that race last year, so over a year now, and that had given me confidence as well, knowing that I've got that under control. Yeah, so all those things gave me a bit more confidence leading into this one.
So starting in zone 1, so that's like so there's different zones. So it's not a rolling start at Cairns. It's like certain like zones you'll go off with, is it?
Yeah, so no, it is a rolling start, but they kind of roll you through based off your zones. So zone 1 is, I forget what it was. I think it was maybe swimming under, it could have been under a minute 7 or a minute 7 and now a 7 was zone 1. So anyone that's planning on swimming there, and then 107 to 110 could have been zone 2 and so forth up to zone 4. So yeah, I found that being really good advice that my coach had given me. It's funny because I know he told me to do that, and when I went to check in, I was signed up for zone 1 and I panicked. And I was like, oh, can I actually go to zone 2? And then I told my coach that I'd done that. And he said, go back and change your cap. You're going to zone 1. So yeah, so definitely confidence is a big thing there. And yeah, that helped me. But look, my swimming, outside of that stuff, my swimming has, improved dramatically. And something that I guess leading into this particular Ironman I did was the 5-day catch challenge. And again, it was something that just a friend in the squad had recommended that I do. And I thought I'll give it a go. It's not a lot of money. I'll just see what happens and give it a go. And I felt like that was, again, it just gave me something to, little things to focus on within my stroke and my swimming. And I love the real simplistic breakdown of that. And there's things within that still resonate with me, things that I think about each and every day, I shouldn't say each and every day, but when I'm in the water and I'm thinking about it squad, there's a lot of things that I've still taken away from that. And I'm thinking about, especially in the warm-up. And a lot of those drills I still take away. They're drills that I do, as part of my warm-up in squad sessions that I currently do. So, yeah, I think it's, I guess, multifaceted in terms of why the improvement's there. It's, I think we've spoken about a lot. I know you have, and my coach speaks about the idea around consistency. And I know you always mention frequency, and it's something that was different as well in terms of the lead into this. I was more frequently in the water and more frequently doing drills. And it was at the start of every squad session. My routine is I'll do a 300 meter swim, and then I'll go into a 25 meter kick on the side drill. I'll do that kind of, and then 25 meter swim, and then I'll do that 4 times through, and then into a doggy scoop. Same thing, 25 meter doggy scoop, 25 meter swim, and then I'll do the YMCA drill. That's still my staple kind of 3 that I do. And I think they're ones that you've recommended with my fins on. And it was doing that 4 times a week for 3 months straight. The product of that was enormous in terms of how I felt, in the water. And I vividly remember in this swim, once I got to the 3K mark, I felt stronger than ever. I felt like my stroke hadn't got sloppy, and that's something that had happened last year. Whenever I got to that 3K mark, and I was just, geez, I wish you got video footage of that, because I was all over the shop. I'm surprised the rescuers didn't jump in to save me. So, I think I could see the byproduct, I guess, of all those, those drills and swim sessions and that frequency and consistency, because I felt strong the whole way through.
Yeah, that's awesome. So with the zone 1 thing, it's great advice from your coach. And I've said this to someone else before, where it's like the faster swimmers are the better swimmers. So they're going to, as you said, follow a better line, but they're also not going to want to like run into you. They're going to typically, try and, there'll be sort of better drafting going on. There'll be better sighting, better line taken, and they're less likely to sort of swim over the top of you because they've got better awareness out there. So you're kind of doing yourself a favor and making it a little bit easier when you do go with the better group. So yeah, I think that's probably partly why it helps as well. And then just that consistency and frequency. And it sounds as though you've got a very patient
and teaching
approach.
all students.
I was talking to another athlete on our podcast a few weeks ago, Bronwyn, and I think her first clinic with us was maybe 2018 or 2019, and similar thing, like it's 3-4 years on from there. But if you have done this stuff consistently for a couple of years, you're going to get better, and having that mindset of not wanting it today, but knowing that just putting in the work and the results will eventually come. It just makes such a big difference. So it's great to see you having taken that approach and down to 107 for your Ironman swim. And yeah, I don't think it's not finished yet. Like I'd be thinking, all right, somewhere down towards that 60-minute or hour mark could be the next target. And is that something you feel like is in range? Do you feel like you could get down to that in the next 12 months?
I'd love to. That's kind of, this swim gave me that confidence of going, I can actually improve, I can get better. And yeah, those times I would love to. I'd love to get around that hour swim mark is something, that I'm definitely going to be working. Yeah, most definitely.
And what is coming up for you? So like, what's your sort of next target in terms of races going forwards?
I don't have anything in mind. I actually don't have anything I've signed up for. Can you hear that noise?
Is that a fire?
That is, which means that I'm probably going to have to get out of here and get to that.
But that's all good. That's going to be the best way to end the podcast, I think. So you probably heard there that the fire drill went off. Dave was a school teacher and the fire drill went off, so he had to go. But what a better way to end a podcast on a fire drill. Thanks very much for listening. And if you haven't left a review on either Spotify or the Apple iTunes store, please leave us an honest review. It helps more people find out about us and hear about what others think of the show. So thanks very much for listening. I'll see you next week on another podcast episode.